Call to order the Village of Cambridge Board of Trustees meeting of June 24th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Schultz.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Blackwood.
Here.
Hollenbeck.
Here.
Drendel.
Here.
Precklow.
Here.
Bruni.
Here. All right, proof of posting, Lucy?
The agenda was posted in the upper and lower levels of the Amundsen Community Center, the post office, Badger Bank, and the village website.
All right, Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, Lucy, you wanted to do some finagling with the agenda so we can assist some of our guests here.
Yes.
Did you want to do that before public comment?
We can do public
All right, so our first public comment. Anybody want to come up to the mic and make their public comment? Got 3 minutes. Come on up, state your name and address, please.
Good evening. Hank Wieland, Lakeside International Trucks in Madison. And just wanted to say, sit down and say thanks for your past business partnership with the dealership. And I want to thank the village for all that we'd had as far as, again, relationship in the past. So, briefly, I know the item of new truck purchase has been discussed, and I received a copy of a correspondence from the legal counsel from the village. Traditionally, our business relationship consisted of an agreement as opposed to a contract, whereas we have done a number of transactions in the past. Starting in 2006 was the first unit that I had provided the village as far as a plow truck, and so we did another one in 2014, same manner, not a contract, but an agreement that we sign a proposal is provided by the dealership on our behalf and then given to the village and then signed, and then we order equipment and trucks and then deliver them, as able. So in 2023, we proposed the vehicle to the village. It was signed in December by the village, by Lisa Moen, and at that time it was a understanding on both parties. We feel that the truck was to be ordered, equipment was to be ordered, put together, and then sometime in the future, given circumstances beyond our control, COVID, supply chain shortages, things of that sort, delay incurred. So what we have now is a delivery of a truck to our dealership that was special ordered and custom ordered for the village of Cambridge, and also equipment, plow and equipment that's ready to go in this fall time frame. But we understand that the village is not willing or is not desiring to take that delivery. So I'm here to say, hey, in person, and say our position as a dealership has done business in a certain manner with the village consistently since 2006. This will be the fourth transaction that I've done personally, and just looking to have maybe a re-examination by the village to understand our position, where we're at as far as the duress we're underneath because of what we have to do as far as own the vehicle and then incur cost, but also our desire is to provide the village with what their need is. It was ordered under an agreement, and so I just want to field any questions at this point, or again ask that the village would reconsider their position to not want to take delivery, whereas again there is no contract that was ever signed other than a simple purchase agreement.
Okay, thank you. Since it's public comment, we can't have the
Sure.
back and
Just
forth discourse, but we can maybe put it on a future agenda item.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. That'd be nice. Again, we're not looking to, shove equipment down anybody's throat and say, hey, you know, you gotta take it, you know, or whatever, because that's not like, we don't like to do business that way, but, we weren't made aware of the, unwillingness or the lack of desire to take delivery until very, very, very late in the process after our portion of the unit was built, and then that came to light, and so, we'd like to, you know, just try to, you know, we think it'd be fair to examine it and then, you know, produce the vehicle and work with you as far as payment or budgeting or whatever would be acceptable for the village.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Any other public comment? All right. Is this the part where we wanted to move up?
Yes, yep, can we, move up item number 10, please?
Make a motion to move up, item 10, correspondence.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so moving on to item 10, we have the letter from Sandy. Yeah. Can you read it?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So I sent you guys a letter that I can either read, or I don't know if you guys have already read it, whatever the course may be. I would just like to add a couple additional things that I know have been sent to you many times, so I didn't inundate your emails with this. Things that were referred to possibly in here is one, the petition of the individual that was submitted. The other one are DNR regulations and standards, which was submitted. The previously agreed upon, the agreement between the village and the developer submitted. And then the item that was submitted per me through Chris, talking about the, for the HOA board, that was also submitted. And of course, I don't have to submit to you your own MSA document, okay? So as far as my letter, we have been working with the village for well on 3 years now, trying to get the ponds in the village, in the Vineyards of Cambridge, taken care of. This has been an ongoing event with little to no response from the village. And there can be many reasons for that, not accusing anybody of anything. We just haven't seen a lot of movement on this. What I'm asking is, and this is with the petition and amongst the people of the vineyards, that we would like regular, transparent updates on what maintenance actions are being taken and what is not. Is that something that the village is willing to work with us on, since this has been an ongoing process for so long?
Right now, we wanted you to read your letter, Sandy.
Okay.
So our engineer, who's sitting directly
Thank you, I
behind
wasn't aware of that. Okay.
Can
Okay.
hear
Yep.
what,
Here we go. Clear communication. We request regular, transparent updates on what maintenance actions are being taken and what is not. Adherence to the maintenance agreement. The village should uphold its responsibilities on the original storm pond maintenance agreement. Implementation of the MSA plan. We ask the village proceed with recommendations outlined in the MSA maintenance plan to ensure long-term functionality and regulatory compliance. DNR compliance. We must all work and fully comply with the DNR regulations. Timeline for action. We request, I can't speak, a clear timeline indicating when each action will begin and when it is expected to be completed. We formally request a dye test to determine whether the pond liner in the northwest pond has been compromised. While muskrats were removed by the village several years ago, per actually my request, there was significant burrowing activity at that time. This area is also near the locations where the home water damage previously occurred, making this assessment especially important. Review of the petition. We respectfully request the village formally review and respond to the petition submitted by the residents concerning stormwater pond maintenance and related concerns. Pond construction and functionality. The MSA report did not confirm whether the ponds were constructed according to design specification or whether they are functioning as intended. We request a follow-up evaluation to address this, and that would be the dye test. Tree removal impact. Large trees were removed from the areas near the pond where roots may have penetrated the liners. We request, the liner, I'm sorry, not liners. We request clarification on whether this has been assessed and whether any necessary remediation has been completed. That is what I had submitted. I said these requests reflect a shared goal of protecting property, ensuring compliance, and maintaining community infrastructure. We appreciate your attention and look forward to all timely response and defined plan of action.
Well, I appreciate you reading that, and now I believe we want to go to 9 on our
First, we'll do the second part of correspondence, which is unrelated to this,
bond
but
petition. Okay.
n- no, the petition is in there as well, which was included in the packet, but, the plaque that I gave you,
Right. Well, I want to take care
Sure,
of this
that's fine.
Sandy situation right now while it's fresh in everybody's mind.
Sure.
So if we could, I'll make a motion to move to old business,
okay?
which is 9, so we can hear what our engineer has to say. And he has a packet to go with this, and I'm sure Sandy will get a copy of this as well.
And then again, I'm not used to this. I just moved back then. Is that what happens? Thank you.
Sorry, can we have Sandy stay here in case she has questions after MSA presents their stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so Sandy, if you want to stay,
Do
And
it.
I'll make that motion if I can get a
I'll
second.
second.
All right, I got a motion and a
So I'll
second.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So now we are on 9, old business discussion and possible action regarding stormwater ponds. So we have our representative from MSA, your name, sir?
Good evening, Bill Pino with MSA. I have been here multiple times, kind of talking about some of the things that we discussed on the stormwater ponds. Obviously, there's some new board members, which is one of the reasons that I provided this packet to provide some background information. Just to give a little bit of history, and a lot of this has occurred before MSA became the village engineers. When the ponds were first constructed, they were designed by Quam Engineering according to DNR standards and village standards. Those were accepted. As-built were provided by Quam Engineering, and those were accepted by DNR and the village. I don't have the exact dates of that. So MSA has never done anything as far as doing additional verification of sizing or anything like that because of the fact that the as-built had been accepted long before we got involved. As far as the village responsibility, the ponds were installed by the developer. Those are considered lot 6. And then as part of some documents that Lucy provided to me, the covenants have a document that dedicated the lot 6 to the village. So that is, if you look on the Dane County records, that's currently owned by the village. So there's nothing disputing as far as the responsibility of those as being the village as well. Last year, we were asked to get involved. There were some questions on the maintenance of the ponds. I talked with Lisa and Todd Lord at the time because there was questions as far as what were the village's responsibilities for maintenance. So simply what we did is we got involved to be able to evaluate the ponds, come up with some of our own conclusions as far as the condition of the ponds, as well as maintenance recommendations that we could provide to the village. So if you go through this, the second slide essentially shows the ponds that are kind of in question here, and that's the Vineyards West, the Vineyards East, and the South Vineyards ponds. And these are taken directly from the report that we provided back in November. There was a number of items that we had made observations of. The Vineyards Pond on the west. I'm not going to go through these in order because people can read as well. Certainly if there's any questions you can ask me as well. But there was some observations that we had on the Vineyards Pond west, east, and then the south ponds. And it was simply in regard to general maintenance with respect to the outlet structures, how the ponds are being maintained around the edges, things like that. And some of those were in response to some of Sandy's comments as well. So at the conclusion of that report, essentially what we had done was made recommendations to the village. We don't control your budgets, so we didn't put any kind of timelines on these. These were simply recommendations as far as general maintenance obligations or general maintenance recommendations the village should consider. Those being clear the inlets and outlet structures of growth and debris for all the ponds, remove vegetation and trees from the banks of all ponds, cover, remove cattails located in the South Vineyards Ponds infiltration basin south of the berm, the infiltration basin for the North Vineyards Pond to be excavated back to design depth and plant appropriate bioretention vegetation. I'll follow up with that in a minute. Replenish rock supply to dividing berm in the Vineyard South Pond. And then after maintenance items 1 through 5, re-inspect the ponds within a year to evaluate the condition of the ponds, if anything has improved or anything like that. But the one thing I want to point out too is that the maintenance of these ponds has to do with water quality. So it doesn't have anything to do with groundwater. It essentially has to do with quality of the sedimentation within the retention ponds, and that's exactly what they're designed for. Item 4 here, the infiltration basin, North Vineyards Ponds. When we did the report, we weren't fully informed. I had multiple conversations with the developer after this study was done, and we determined that the developer actually worked with DNR and the village to be able to excavate that infiltration basin out, and they replanted, putting engineered soils back in. So some of the recommendations that we had included regarding that infiltration basin actually were completed. I was provided documentation from the developer as well as receipts as far as what they had done, and I had provided those to Lisa at the time. I also reached out to the Public Works Department and just asked them to document some of the things that they've done routinely in the past, as well as what they've done after the completion of our report. So prior to 2023, they were doing occasional mowing of the banks with their previously owned ditch mower and UTV pull behind, no longer with the village at this point. August of 23, they rented a boom mower tractor to mow around the fish ponds, and they did what they could to reach the north end of the subdivision. Late summer of 2024, they removed some woody vegetation around Southern Vineyards ponds, with the exception of the largest trees that still remain. December 24, with frozen ground, Jay mowed as much as he could to reach a skid loader around the north ponds. Following that, they burned a large portion of the remaining vegetation in those areas. April and May of 2025, they mowed what they could be reached in and around the South Vineyards and Western Winery ponds. And then in June of 25, the wetland area was also mowed, spot herbicide treatment at some inlet outlet structures. And then there was just some additional comments of other observations that they've seen as far as dumping in the ponds and such. And then I just provided some of the photos that Derek had provided me, showing some of the equipment that they had used, some of the burning and some of the mowing that they've recently completed. So I can certainly ask some questions. I know a couple of things that Sandy had indicated as far as some of the requests. I can certainly respond to some of those as well. As far as a timeline, that's certainly up to the village, how you guys want to respond, whether or not you want to provide that. But certainly the timeline that I provided is essentially some of the efforts that Public Works has undertaken since the report. So in my opinion, they have certainly taken it upon themselves to be able to do some cleaning of the ponds. I think at the time when we originally looked at this, there was certainly an ownership that they had considered that they needed to do more, and they were really just looking for us to be able to provide information as far as what to do. Some of the things that they certainly still need to do is clean those inlets and outlets to be able to do those things. But those are typically routine maintenance as far as that you would typically expect. There are some requirements that some municipalities, not the village, are responsible for if they're an MS4 community as far as responsibility. That doesn't fall on the village. There is a maintenance agreement that was essentially provided with the Quam's engineering plans, which is very similar to this. So the things that we include in a report are very typical of what you would typically do for maintenance, mainly just maintaining that the water levels are being maintained in the pond. And as far as certain things, I think it was mentioned about doing dye tests. Tonight's the first time I've heard anything about this muskrat burrowing.
That's true.
And that's certainly something that is above and beyond the typical maintenance at this point. I personally don't have any reason to do that. And certainly something we didn't evaluate or anything like that. However, the elevation of the pond still appears to be at the outlet structure, so it seems like it's holding water like it normally would.
Can I ask you a question about the
Sure.
the maintenance of the inlets and outlets? When does that usually take place?
Annually.
Annually, in the fall?
You know, it's kind of an as-needed thing. The expectation is that you inspect the inlets on an annual basis.
Okay.
In most cases, you're inspecting them either in the fall or the spring or as needed. But the main thing is if there is vegetation or reports of vegetation in those, that they are cleaned out. So that's certainly something that I would definitely recommend that the Public Works take on to be able to clean out any of the vegetation in those inlets, just to make sure the water is coming in and out of the ponds as expected.
All right. Thank you.
So with that, that's really what I had to present tonight. But certainly I can take any additional questions that you may have.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you just review for me, what is the purpose of these ponds, and what impact do they have on groundwater?
So
Because it's my understanding they're two different things.
that is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. So you have detention ponds that are dry and you have detention ponds that are wet. In this case, these are called wet detention basins. And there's DNR guidelines as far as how those are designed with respect to groundwater, slopes, and depth of the ponds. Typically, the ponds are on average 4 to 5 feet deep. They have a safety shelf at a 10-to-1 slope for safety. But what the purpose of the ponds are is anytime that you have development and you're taking ground that is completely impervious, which is typically grass, and you're adding pervious areas such as rooftops, streets, things like that, what ends up happening is that the flow rate that you're draining through these areas increases. So there are requirements from DNR that says the post-development flow can't be any higher than the pre-development flow. So that means if you're replacing a grass area with a parking lot, certainly the water is going to get from point A to point B, upstream to downstream, much faster. But what the requirements indicate is at that downstream point, the outlet rate, the flow rate, cannot be any higher than was pre-development. So what these ponds are is twofold. One is that you have a permanent pool in the ponds to be able to settle sediment out, and that's the reason you have a permanent pool, to be able to settle out within 24 hours of a rain event. The structures are designed so that the outflow meets those pre-development, so the rates. So essentially what you have is an outflow that is not increased from the pre-development flow, to be kind of just straightforward with that. So, and the sizing is based on the amount of development, the watershed areas, but it's a water quality issue, is how these are designed and why they are designed.
So what would a dye test do?
To be honest, I don't know.
I mean,
they're
because the waterfront, the excess water that's in, my understanding is, the excess water that's in a pond is going to go into the groundwater at, or, you know, it goes at that lower flow. So
So
we're
you-
expecting stuff to flow out of it.
Right, so essentially what you have is, you have what's called a permanent pool, and that's the normal elevation or the normal height of the water column. And then as water comes in, all of your storage capacity is above that. So as water comes in, it then flows out the outlet structure. And you have ponds, whether it's a clay liner or sometimes fabric liner, to be able to hold that water. I've had some ponds that go dry, so that tells you that the sides, the pond was either not designed correctly, compacted correctly, so that the water is basically exiting the bottom of the ponds or the sidewalls. So because of the fact that I see water staying pretty much at the outlet structure, I don't have any reason to believe that there is any type of breach at this point, just based on normal observations that I have on that. So if you're doing a dye test, realistically, if you're putting dye in a pond, it's just going to sit there, because right now there is no, until you have a rainfall event, the water doesn't discharge. And I would anticipate that the water would outflow through the outlet structure like it's designed to.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
May I?
Sandy, do you have any?
I do. So you had mentioned about the dye test that you weren't aware of it. This had happened approximately a year and a half ago. You weren't able to make the meeting, and another gentleman was there at that time. At that time, I had requested a dye test, and he said he would take it back to you. I'm sure it's on record someplace. So I'm sorry that you weren't aware of it. I realize that in order for you to do a dye test, you need to have a significant amount of rainfall. Right now, you could not do a dye test because there's no water above the actual liner level. When I was asking for it, we were at a very large rainfall event, which if there would have been any perforation of that clay liner, you would have been able to see the dye going in certain areas. The muskrats, you are 100% correct on. I forgot about it, and I'm actually the ones that had them removed. But the water had not been that high from when the muskrats were removed until that event. So when you went and inspected the pond, of course you would not have been able to see those burrows, because they would have been well underneath the water level. Okay? The two areas where they have the largest burrows, or had the largest burrows, where you could see the embankment now has collapsed. You can't now. That pond is complete vegetation. There's a very small amount of surface water available on the pond that you can see. I'm sure it's under by the cattails, that's what they live in. The two houses that had the issue are both where those muskrat burrows were. And I apologize, I didn't remember it, but remember, this isn't my forte to do that. So I had remembered it, and I thought I should bring it up. The other thing that I had mentioned was sediment depth. Now, as you said, that it's really only for water quality. That is, you know, you're the expert, that's 100% true, I know that to be. However, when you continue to have these large overgrowths of cattails and thistles, sediment rate increases rapidly in that pond, reducing the water depth. Is that correct? If you have more sediment, that...
Cattails are typically indicated of shallower areas.
Yep.
Yes.
And now what you're seeing in the pond area, and I don't know if you had time to go out again, I mean, you're a busy man. The pond is completely overgrown with cattails, minus a small amount of surface area, which would show, or, you know, kind of demonstrate that we have, the depth has decreased. In my opinion, not the expert, would love to walk through it again with you. You said the developer worked with the DNR in the village for the inspection of their work for the inlet area. That's very
For
pop-
the infiltration area.
Will that be for the new inlet area that they put in, that upper pond that's over by the red house, if you
On
remember?
the west side, yes.
So the person that was sent out was Bill Rangette's son-in-law, and he came and he dumped rocks in there. When I asked him what he was doing, he said that the village told him to do that, okay? If you look at the inlet pond, or whatever you said, the correct words for it, it's actually at a lower level than the pond itself. So what he did, based on me just saying something, is they decided they would dig a trench and they would fill it with rocks. I doubt that that's been audited afterwards. I don't doubt that the DNR and the village signed off on a perfect plan. I guess I would request, did an engineer go out there and audit it? Does the DNR go back and check that things are done to what their specifications are? Also a very busy group of people, I don't know if they do that. So then does the engineer does MSA go out and inspect it? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you know it's done
So-
correctly?
So,
Based on
Yes.
grade.
Can we hold 1 second?
sure.
We have our friends from Ellers here as well to do the audit. I'm wondering if you guys could have this conversation in that room back there and discuss amongst yourselves this, so we can kind of move on with our meeting, and we can come back here and have other discussions.
So the only thing I would offer is that the information that she's asking has already been provided to Lisa
Okay.
previously through emails regarding the rock ditch area.
And that would be the inspection of it after it was completed, correct?
No, that was just simply an explanation of what happened by Todd Lord. And that's been provided previously to the village.
And when I talked to Todd Lord directly, he said he knew nothing about it and was just told to do, so.
As it stands right now,
I know.
we have a very short crew with our public works
I know,
folks.
yeah.
So I would just ask you, Sandy, just to have a little patience, but they are showing us that they are making some moves forward with trying to remove some of that vegetation back there.
So, I see the pictures, but based on the magnitude of it, they burnt a very small amount of the pond, and it's already regrown with cattails. So, yes, have they tried to do stuff? Yes, but this has been ongoing for years. It's not just a request I came up with yesterday and said, hey, can you go and fix this? So, I mean, I don't think I'm really gonna get any place on this anymore, is what I'm seeing. If it's open for you guys for comment, I mean, what do you think you're gonna do about it? You have the maintenance agreement, you have the DNR regulations, you're not supposed to have thistles overgrown on the pond sides, you're not supposed to have the cattails. I mean, I don't know what else to do, you guys. This is not my area of expertise. This has been 3 years going. I do believe I'm right. Based on even the MSA report, I do believe I'm right, but nothing's really happened, so, I don't know. I'm trying.
I know, and we are as well. We're doing the best we can with what we have.
Yep.
So,
So, yeah, let's see where it goes, I guess. But I'm not coming back to the meetings anymore then, right?
I think the new herbicide treatment is probably, I mean, because they have gone out there repeatedly and tried to take care of the stuff, but as you say, it regrows. If you don't take things out by the roots, it's going to regrow.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping the new herbicide treatments that they're using out there are going to show some of the results that we need so that the things don't regrow.
I know.
So I guess I would just say that, I can answer any questions that you guys have. As far as, essentially, we work for the village as far as providing you. So as far as, I can certainly have conversations
Yeah, I got
with
it.
Sandy on these things, but at the end of the day, it's certainly up to the village as far as how you guys are doing maintenance. From what I can see, you guys are making an effort on these things, and I think what we had recommended is after a year, come back and just take a look and make a recommendation or comments on those. There is a requirement that are inspected annually, whether you hire MSA to do it or you do it internally, you guys can do that. So,
Can I just have clarification? I wrote down and I want to make sure I heard you
Sure.
correctly. Did you say there's no reason to believe there is a breach based on observing normal water levels? Is that what you said?
that's what I said, yes.
And that's for all of the ponds? For all of the ponds in the vineyards?
From what I can see on the ponds,
Okay.
the water levels are maintaining based on the outlets. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly. Thank you.
Right.
And just to be clear, what I think I heard from Sandy is that there was a regulation prohibiting cattails. That, I'm not familiar with that, if that's true. And I happen to used to be the stormwater attorney for the DNR. I think what the DNR regulations require is the water level
Correct.
and not the specific. I don't think there's any regulation that gets to the cattails.
Isn't it for noxious weeds also, such as thistle that's overgrown
That-
in that
that-
area?
that definitely
And that
could be.
cattails are supposed to maintain so they don't have an overgrowth of?
Definitely maintenance is required, but.
Okay, my
but
apologies
all
for
to-
misspeaking
No,
on
no,
the.
no, I just wanted to,
on the correct
I
jargon.
thought that
Mhm.
it was important to clarify that point, that it's, all of those are goals, practices that lead to the goal of keeping the water level
Right, exactly,
manageable.
exactly.
So I guess moving forward, we can either contact your, do you want me to go through the HOA for updates from our public works folks? Would that be sufficient?
If that's the way that you would like to do it,
Mhm.
sure, that would be great. I mean, you have the questions that I have. It sounds like some of the aspects probably will not be looked at. But I guarantee you, if you guys go out to the ponds, there are no longer true ponds. True, like if you go to Sun Prairie and you look at their retention ponds, and you see the riprap around the shoreline, you see the riprap on the inlet and the outlet. I did regulations, so I'm just not a pond person. I have a civil engineer for a daughter who does ponds, so I mean, I'm getting my information, you know, just like from Bill and stuff. So I believe that I have accurate information here as well, but you guys do what you want. But there's no reason for me to come back, correct? We're done here? Would you say that?
Yeah.
Because it's not gonna go any further if I keep coming to the meetings, right?
We're
So,
still gonna do our
so-
maintenance.
I am the chair of the Water and Sewer Committee.
As I know.
I am
Mhm.
also chair of the Public Works Committee.
I know that too.
So, I have the information that we have.
Mhm.
I'm gonna work with through both of those committees to create an annual maintenance plan for all of the ponds throughout the village. So I think one of the things, so that, and then that annual maintenance plan can be posted online, anybody can see what it is, and we can see where it is. Because once again, we want to make sure all of the stormwater ponds are treated equally throughout the village, that all of them are taken care of the same way.
I hope they're not taken care of like ours.
So,
That's all I can say. That would be
yeah.
terrible.
So the other thing, and Lucy, I don't know, so we know, as Bill had said, that the two on the north side of the vineyards have been turned over to the village, and the village owns those and the land they're on. What about the other stormwater, because if we don't own the land those are on, are we really responsible for them? And
The two on the north and the one on the south, it's all included in the same lot.
Correct.
the two on the north and the one in the south are
Yes.
included in the same lot?
Correct.
Okay, so it's just those three, and the one in the south, is that the one that's next to the
One closest
winery?
to the entrance.
that's, oh,
There's two also that are further west. We
Okay.
took a look at those, but I didn't do any further research on those as
because
far
I don't think
as.
we own those, and I don't, so the one. Let me look at your map.
If you want me at a later time just to be able to provide some information as far as those lots and ownership, I can certainly provide that, if there's any question on it.
Well, Bill, thank you very much for your
Okay,
expertise.
this is the
Absolutely.
RBK Park.
Sorry that
Okay, now I see where
things
you're
just
talking.
don't seem
So
to
even though
move
they're
forward.
so far apart, they're still considered lot 6?
You got my number, so.
Yeah.
Even though they're so far apart, they're still considered, all of those were considered lot 6?
Yes, I believe it is. I'll
Okay.
I'll verify that, but.
Okay.
But there is, it was a document within the covenants.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
And then, okay. Because I want to make sure that as we are developing these plans, that we're doing them for the ponds that the village owns, and ponds the village does not own. We have to make sure that
Yeah,
we let the whole, if people complain about them, we let whoever owns them know that there's been complaints and they have to address it.
I can follow up with an
I'm one
email
of
to Lisa, or to Lucy.
So,
We bought the land behind us, there's
Yep.
a huge retention pond there, now we have to take care of it.
Okay,
So I did submit, and I just want to say this, from the stormwater management report, when the ponds were handed over to the village, which the village did sign off on, I do have that document on my computer. Stormwater management report, 12/10 of 2014, what the responsibilities were on the maintenance plan, and that's been previously submitted. And then on top of that, MSA did another site visit of that. So this is something that's been ongoing. This is not a new subject. Well, thank you very much for your time, guys. I
Thank
know
you.
you're busy and got stuff to do,
thank you, Sandy.
so,
Appreciate it.
yep.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Bill, I appreciate you.
No problems.
Yeah.
Want to talk about Springwater Alley
Yeah,
while I'm
can we
here?
do the Springwater Alley quick,
Yeah.
and then MSA will do?
So we're moving on to old business 9B, Springwater Alley update.
Okay. Just gonna provide a brief update. Obviously, we know Springwater Alley eventually be renamed Springwater Street. As of right now, the original contract was $136,000. To date, what we've got right now is one change order, in the amount of about $10,000, and that was for, a header system that hadn't been put in on the north end for the, storm inlets that were coming in from the north side. When we designed it, what we had anticipated is that those would be incidental to construction, tie into the new storm sewer. What we didn't have at the time, we didn't do any additional subsurface investigation or hydrovacking of any of those inlets to verify the grades on those. It was determined that those would not work with the grades due to the size of them, so we put a header system in to be able to tie those in so that there wouldn't be any disruption to any of those private properties to be able to still tie into that storm sewer. I know this project was a borrowed amount, so as far as there wasn't necessarily a budget provided on there, but a typical contingency on a project is around 10%. But I would also add that included within our original estimate, we had included approximately $15,000 for undercut. And what that's for is once you have a proof roll, if you have areas that do not pass a proof roll, you excavate those out. We had not done any type of investigation of the subgrade in cores, so we made an assumption of 25%. We had that proof roll this afternoon, and the existing subgrade passed, so there is no EBS in there, so that $15,000 that's included in the original costs will not have to be exercised. So we're kind of minus 15 plus 10 on the
The plus
project.
10 though will be paid by the water and sewer stormwater, because that's a stormwater item. So remember that stormwater alley is being paid by both our general
Correct.
fund or our road fund, as well as then water and sewer.
Correct.
So that 10,000 would go on the water and sewer side.
Correct.
Yeah.
So as far as other updates, we had the proof roll that passed this afternoon. As of right now, we're anticipating, weather dependent, that we pave on Friday. Whether or not we're gonna put both lifts in right away or not. Contractor is still looking at doing that all in one day or possibly coming back a second day to be able to pave. So I know that we had anticipated completing it by early July, and it looks like we should be right on track with that and possibly completed by the end of the week.
Great. Great.
Thank you.
Change order for 10K, and then we save 15, so we're in the plus 5K, so.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you,
We
Bill.
need more good news like that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much, I
guys.
appreciate it.
Yep, have a good evening.
And I know it's a wonky night, but can we move up 8B, please?
Make a motion to move 8B to current discussion.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Eller's proposal, 2026 budget and capital planning. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. I don't know, Lisa, there are
It's okay.
Lucy.
You can call me anything.
too many L's.
Yeah.
I don't know, Lucy, if you wanted to
Yeah.
state at all kind of why you reached out. And
Absolutely.
when we can start.
So when I first reached out to Ellers regarding the water sewer storm budget, to get a proposal for them. Also started digging into our budget, and capital, 5 and 10-year capital planning. And there, from my personal opinion, there is not a great foundation to work off of. And so I reached out to them and kind of picked, especially Brian's brain, on different areas and trying to make sense of things. And I asked, why haven't you been more involved in the budget process and capital planning? And he said, well, we've been trying to. And I said, can I please have a proposal? Because again, same with water sewer storm. This is not an annual investment. This is an investment for years to come, with obviously annual reviewing, but we need a good foundation and I guess outlook so that we can plan better, like for things like equipment, vehicles, staff increases with all of the growth that we have. And that's kind of how it started, and I'll let them take it from there, but you can reach out to me with any further questions regarding the why. But
Yeah, thank you, Lucy, and thank you all for having us here tonight. I do see there's a few new trustees, so I'll introduce myself. Brian Raymer, a senior municipal advisor with Ellers. That is kind of a different thing than audit or anything else you may associate with a dollar sign. But we are your registered municipal advisor, meaning we have a fiduciary duty to represent you in all financial matters that you kind of elect us to represent you on. Typically, in the past, that's kind of been debt issuance, financial management of the water utility a few years ago, and then just kind of one-off phone calls, but just note, we do not charge for those. So those are free 99. And I'll let Casey introduce himself.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Casey Griffiths. I'm Senior Financial Specialist with Ellers. Prior to, I'm actually relatively new to the company, but prior to that, I had 13 years of municipal government experience as a city administrator.
So, and just of note, we've been the registered municipal advisor for some time, I want to say early 2010s. And then myself, been the lead advisor for the village since 2019. So, been in front of, the various boards, through, any staff changes, etc. To elaborate on what Lucy stated about past budget involvement, those have been more just open-ended phone calls, and what we will do for the communities that we regularly serve for those services that I previously mentioned. We'll kind of do a levy limit check and answer any questions that staff may have, but we are not going line by line and reviewing the budget to kind of say, oh, that you may want to bump that up a little bit, that might not be realistic, etc. So we're just kind of doing a quick overview and just checking that you're falling within something that's called levy limits, that hopefully doing some bigger process, like I'll explain shortly, we can kind of get into more detail to educate those on the board that might not understand how municipal budgeting works. So I did hand out a packet. This is pretty detailed to provide kind of all of the aspects we do, but I would like to just kind of keep your attention verbally here and just kind of explain quite simply what we're going to look to do. Essentially is look at the governmental funds, not just the utilities. That was the utilities were a separate engagement, but look at the governmental funds to identify kind of where have you been and where are we going into the future. But the majority of that is not to say like what should we have done, are we doing things incorrectly. It's more of an education process on how it works, how to think about it, and provide better education to the board so you can make better decisions when you get to that decision point and feel like you have a decision framework to work off of to say, maybe we can't do salary increases for this year because of X, Y, and Z, or maybe we can do salary increases because of X, Y, and Z. Maybe we have to do, our purchase of equipment in this year and not that year. We build out a long-range plan. But the majority of what we're doing is kind of an educational process through a series of kind of workshops, not only with staff to help them build a more formidable budget document, which I think is, you know, certainly what Lucy's looking for, but then to educate the board through workshops to say, here's kind of where we've been. So you go into the 2026 budget season understanding kind of how it works, and then as we start building the 2026 budget, looking at options, right, in terms of what you can do, impacts on tax rates, which is probably the most impactful decision, not just can we fit under levy limits, but understanding, you know, what happens to our tax rate. Quick anecdotal example, had a community say, we like the flat tax rate. I said that sounds great. You're also looking to issue $5 million of debt next year. That's gonna increase your tax rate for 20 years, you know, regardless how you slice it, right? New debt payment, new impacts to your taxpayers. I also looked at saying, what if you allow for a 3% tax bill increase by levying for capital, meaning you're gonna levy dollars not only for operational expenses, but take in, I believe it was an extra $100,000 for capital needs. Instead of issuing $5 million, you're issuing $4.9 million. What's the variance in the tax rate? So while they are doing a more immediate increase, right, of that 3%, it actually leveled out the tax impact completely over the 20 years and provided an even elongated savings in terms of interest expenses on that debt issue. So just a quick anecdotal example of kind of evaluating those options where the board said, actually, we will accept in this other community, not this community, a 3% tax increase for this year in anticipation that we'll use those dollars to downsize our borrowing in a future year. So hopefully that provides enough guidance to kind of what we're looking to do here. But again, just kind of being a little more involved in the budget process and providing that education to you all. So can certainly answer any questions. We can dive into this, you know, bigger packet if you'd like, but this is more of a take home so you kind of understand our process.
So what are the questions, Lucy, that we have to answer today? Or was this more of an informational, introducing it to us?
Yep, they have a proposal.
What's the proposal gonna cost us?
Yeah.
Yeah, so is the proposal,
Yep, it's in here.
Yep.
I say it was 8,000 total, but
Mhm.
give me a second.
that sounds right.
That was
Okay.
in the packet?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is in the
okay.
packet. A very large packet. And just to add on to that is, I'm looking at the future, but we also have to look back at how we got to where we are in the present. And I want us to be a proactive community and not a reactive community and board, where problems arise, but if we have reserves, if we have capital improvement plans, if we have that, we are more prepared. And I just, from my short time here, I don't feel that we are set up right now for a proactive future. And by working with Ellers on this, I think this is $8,000 is going to, in the 10 years, it's going to save us thousands by having that foundation, by having a plan. We need a vehicle replacement plan, equipment replacement plans. We need to be looking closer at salary and benefit plans as they continue to increase and change and evolve, all areas of operations. And so that is my hope, to have their assistance with that, and so that we can steer the ship forward in a responsible way, that we are prepared for what economics in the world may throw at us, that we are prepared for those things, I guess.
I'll make a motion to hire Ehlers to perform services related to budgeting and capital finance planning for the Village of Cambridge.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
You guys said you go back and look at the old things, but not really. You're more focused on education and all that but it'd really be nice to know how deep you guys kind of go back and look at the old things. So, for instance, a snow truck was ordered and wasn't funded years ago, and so how would you guys make sure that you found those things so you can help make sure with a piece of what you're trying to do is helping that plan?
Yeah, so essentially you would look at, like, typically we go 5 years back outside of like a special request to analyze something like that. Like if we needed to, we could certainly do that. We wouldn't be there to be the arbiters of how it happened, like communication amongst staff or like that's kind of not our role there.
Yep.
But we could identify.
You do
right,
need to know that those things are there so that you can help. Okay,
Right.
That's what I want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, but we do go line by line, revenues, expenditures, to identify between all the governmental funds as part of this. So presuming, right, we can see that was actually recorded, presuming your auditors, right, are catching things like that as well. But we'll also make statements to, hey, maybe this was missed in the audit, and that could be due to miscommunication between members. And again, we're not there to blame anybody. It's just kind of a, hey, I think this should be represented this way, or other adjustments based off of what we see, and then you guys take that to whatever party you need to.
Okay. Thank you.
Would this just be for audit and finance, or would it be for the full board? The education?
We recommend you choose that at your own. So we have some communities that create, like, an ad hoc committee if they don't have a finance committee. Some use the finance committee, some use the full board. I kind of leave that up to the community. I would recommend, given some of the new faces, the board might be suitable.
I would think I would absolutely want to do the full board, because any given year, we don't know who's going to be
switch
chair, who's
committees,
going to be on
right.
audit and finance.
Right.
So we all need to have the information.
And what does the education entail? Like, is this for several months? Is it,
Yeah.
what does that look like?
Yeah, so we would typically come and present a couple of times. The initial presentation would be the primary education piece to understand how levy limits work, because that's kind of the baseline knowledge that you need to understand municipal budgeting. But then we also would educate within levy limits, how do we think about budgeting, and how should you be thinking about budgeting? And that's, top down, bottom up approach, thinking about, non-levy sources of revenue. What are some opportunities the village has to obtain other revenues, items like that. But these can be elongated discussions too. So if you do it at the board level, there could be consideration of navigating the meeting time, the when, things, I don't know if you need more meetings, but you know what I mean. You just kind of want to think through those elements, as it can last like 45 minutes, because there can
But
be
it's
a
not
very good
generic,
discussion.
it's honed down to Cambridge proper. right?
Correct.
Okay.
And would it be acceptable to record those so that future board members who could go back and then view that, we can have that as part of the, welcome to the board, watch these videos? Okay. Because that would be really, really helpful.
And then, can you speak a little on the 5 and 10-year plan?
Sure.
The results of that?
Yeah, generally, we try to keep it as simple as possible. So when we look at projecting into the future, we codify and categorize your line item expenses, right? So let's take wages as one example. We'll kind of look historically, where have you been trending with wages? Because if, staff and the board says, we think 3% is appropriate, but then we're seeing employee, like insurance premiums are going up 14%. Now we've got roads that aren't meeting, right? So we'll evaluate, right, line by line, kind of where to project in the future, and you kind of select how you want that to look based off of some of those preliminary discussions. So that's the operating element. In terms of future capital needs, that's where we would need a little more input from the village, right? I at least need to see a current equipment listing at minimum, and then kind of a expected service life to understand, all right, what might run out. But, you know, I've kind of provided already a template for Lucy to use where she can see, all right, I can start inputting project description a year and an estimated expenditure. But we're not gonna say, hey, Main Street project's gonna take $1 million. So if you do need to ask your engineer, you know, questions on that, or, you know, talk amongst yourselves about what you want to all include there, that there could be other parties involved, is my point. So.
How much time do you think that template and all that gathering might take some staff to pull together?
A couple months, and typically like 2 Teams calls is what I'll see with, that's why we're kind of talking about it now, so that we can build towards the budget season coming, you know, late summer to start the education as you roll into budget season, and then really start pedal to the metal when you're in September, October. And the biggest thing is you get these unfortunate data points so late in the year too, where you have to be ready to make quick decisions on, now we know our full assessment because the state manufacturing numbers came out November 1st, but we have to adopt a budget November 14th. Or, yeah, it's always a fun process.
Yes, it is.
But you'll be well prepared, at least with an estimate, for example, on that state manufacturing assessment, and then we just kind of tweak the numbers as we get those final details. So.
Okay. Any more questions? So we have a motion and a second. It is money. Do we have a number?
$8,000. It is, I've got it up in front of me,
Okay.
it's $8,000.
Okay, roll call, please.
Burning,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Krecklau,
Yes.
Hollenbeck,
Yes.
Trendle,
Yes.
Blackwood,
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am so looking forward to this. This is gonna
So
be
am
fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're gonna see a lot of Paula and myself with
Oh.
water and sewer as well.
Hope to see you all a lot.
Yes.
And just for the record, I want to thank you for previous help in this. I know you've been kind of doing this in the past, kind of pro bono, so to speak, through phone calls and everything. So I just want to say I appreciate that. So moving forward.
Well, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, Lucy, where are we?
Where are we? That is a very good question.
We're at 5?
We're at number 5.
Five.
All right, thank you, Paula. Number 5, approval of the consent agenda. So we got village board minutes from 5/27, joint police minutes, same dates, public work minutes 6/5, plan commission minutes. Wow, you guys have been busy over here, Lucy.
I've-
6/9, licensing minutes 6/10, board of review minutes 6/10, and water and sewer minutes from 6/17.
Were we missing a board thing on the 10th?
Yes,
Yes.
so those are still in progress.
Okay, I just wanted to make, okay.
Yeah.
I thought so. Okay.
Nope, no worries. They'll be at the next meeting. I'll get caught up eventually.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
I have one correction.
Oh, yep.
It's probably the same one you have. On the village board meetings, number 8C, that is, it should be trustee Blackwood, not trustee Hollenbeck.
I did the same thing. I did it last time too.
Okay.
Got it,
There
thank
were
you.
two sentences that,
Yeah.
the first 2 sentences need correcting, otherwise everything else is right.
Thank you. I will get that updated.
All right, anything else?
Not see anything else.
All right, all those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent agenda passes. All right, moving on to 6, reports, Fire and EMS Commission.
So we had a meeting June 11th, which was our second meeting, and it went well. All 4 of the trustees, language is gonna be tough for me tonight, commissioners were there. Steve Friedman joined us for the first meeting, which was great. Just a few highlights. Tracy Brandel and I, the treasurer, and I have had 2 meetings with the CPA. We have a firm bill paying process in place, which seems simple, but it wasn't. And we are working on the financial tracking pieces, so that each meeting we will be able to present a budget to actual, along with a bill paying report, so that everyone is able to see that. Tracy and I are currently the only 2 individuals with payment approval abilities. That was different than past practices. We are working on getting all of the vendor bills, invoices sent directly to the CPA rather than coming to the mailboxes and other things like that to expedite the processes, and utilizing the electronic bill paying heavily rather than cutting hard checks. We are working on the administrative clerk job description, and the goal is to have a job description drafted for review and approval at our next commission meeting. We're looking at approximately 20 hours. We're still in the process of hammering out what those duties will look like. And then the same with the EMS director job description. The hope is to have the review and approval at the next commission meeting as well. There's a few items that we have to talk about. In the past, they've been discussing what the position as a working director, so we have to kind of hammer out the details of what that would look like, how that would align with what the union feels is appropriate. And then each meeting, we're beginning the process of reviewing an IGA section to look at tightening language, removing ambiguity, drafting changes that would be beneficial to all the municipalities involved. Things like identifying decision-making authority. Once we have that done, we will bring it back to the municipalities to review, to go through and kind of redline as well. And then we are starting the 2026 budget and collective bargaining and agreement negotiations coming up as well.
On the clerk position, if you do hire a clerk, then does the commission still need to have a secretary on the board?
No.
Okay.
No.
So then that would be an IGA
IGA
change
change.
that we would look at
Correct.
making?
Yep.
Okay. And then in the collective bargaining, I don't know, one of the items that I had asked Chris to do last year, and it was tough, was dictating so that they weren't on that schedule where they got like
Extended overtime.
so much overtime.
Yeah.
So that we can, in that negotiation process, require them to use the schedule that saves us overtime money.
That is one of the discussions.
It is?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
72 or something.
Yeah,
Preferably going to a 24/72.
yes, thank you.
Yep.
All right.
All right, any questions for Kristen? If not, we'll move on to Library Board, June 11th, 2025. Jennifer?
Yes, the summer reading program is underway. Lots of village residents have signed up for that. We talked about the impacts of the construction. I think that the board and Samantha will be happy to hear that it's going to be completed could potentially be completed as soon as this week. There is new orientation scheduled for the 2 new trustees. We had a request to investigate whether the library could host a little free food pantry. We did some comparisons. The Jefferson Library does that. They have more staff and they have more space to do that, and the board decided to decline the request to have the little free food pantry, and the person who asked for that has been put into contact with CAP so that they can see if there is another place within the village where there could be a food pantry available more than just the one evening. And our next meeting is scheduled for July 9th.
All right. Doesn't CART have a food pantry? CART?
I think it's
CAP.
just through CAP.
CAP has a food pantry,
It's
yes,
a-
but,
Yeah, Capital Cart and.
but like the little, it's just like,
The little libraries?
yeah, it's like little libraries, it's
Okay.
like on a corner.
It is actually more expansive than that.
Mm.
They get deliveries from like Second Harvest and
Oh.
some other places, so it was pretty extensive. The little free food pantry, it was not like a homemade little box
I
or
gotcha. All right.
anything. It was like you actually needed places to store food that was perishable.
Oh, wow.
So
Alright.
that just did not fit with our library's mission, and
There's no room in the storage room.
well, and it also impacts the, like, the library staff is there to help library patrons.
Yeah.
And not necessarily to
Take
be a
care of food stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right, well, thank you. And moving on to 6C, Water Sewer Committee, June 17th. Paula?
So Rockdale had their intercollection project bid, so they went out for bid on that project, but we don't have an agreement with them yet. So we are hoping or anticipating that Rockdale's going to be contacting us, and we'll have to get together and form that agreement. The recommendation from the engineer was not to sign the agreement until they had an agreement with Cambridge, so, or their bid packet, not to award it, so we'll see what's happening there. Let's see, then, final payment, we did do the final payment for well number 3. We approved that. Both MSA and our internal staff both said that they felt everything was closed on that project, so we got that all locked up. And then we're doing an investigation into perhaps purchasing and installing a bulk water dispensing station out by the water tower. Right now, when we need, so like the solar installation uses water to like drill down the holes that the stuff goes into. So there's like about 6 to 8 trucks a day that are going out to our water tower and getting bulk water. And our staff sort of either has to be there to help them or whatever. And if we got this station, we could be a lot more tight with making sure we're getting paid the right amount of money for the right amount of stuff. So that's where we're looking into that, and that'll be back at our July meeting. We'll be talking about that in a little more detail. I think that's about it. Anything else, Lucy, or who else was at the meeting? No, it wasn't.
I wasn't there, but the final disbursement
Yep.
from this
Well, number 3?
will be tomorrow.
Perfect.
That helps pay for the final check and then some. From a water tower perspective, Derek reached out to me today and said it was urgent, that the US Cellular was not working,
Oh, okay.
and he wants to cancel that immediately and wanted me to set up Spectrum instead, because that hasn't, for water, for meter reads, it's not working.
Got it.
Spectrum is coming tomorrow at 4, so I will be at the water tower tomorrow at 4 for them to set up, and we'll be disconnecting US Cellular, which has not worked to date.
Oh,
So-
okay.
We're gonna get that working because it's making the meter reading process a
So
lot
much
more
harder.
labor intensive than it needs to be.
Thank
So
you.
that's just a today update.
That's all I had.
All right, moving on to 6D, Economic Development.
We just met at 5 o'clock today, so just letting you guys know that. We found quite a bit of staff items, but it was good to have public comment from some of our business owners coming to our meeting. So, especially some discussion about the mural ordinance that we just passed. It started to spur some discussion and some other ideas about what to do downtown. There were a couple items that we got from the Connect Communities and WEDC that had been sent to various members that are no longer on the committee. So we talked to Lucy about we need to make sure that we have all committee members on some sort of distribution list so that it's not like one person is on a committee, they get information, they're no longer in the committee, that information stops getting, coming in. So, a couple items there. The Cambridge storefront competition was awarded. I had Lucy send that information to everybody and the board members just for information on that. We worked through the workflow of the roof tax ordinance. Lucy's got most of the items on there cleaned up, so we're getting close to getting ready for when we're going to need to get that implemented later this year. So, and then the other items that we worked on were a couple items that also I think the Planning Commission is working on, which is bylaws for what the Economic Development Committee is, how it's constructed, and then kind of a mission statement. And that's something that can be put more on the website. What I'd like to do is ask the other committees to also work with Lucy to kind of use the same format so we all have these kind of together and they all kind of work together. And then they tie into personnel plans. So who's on the committee, what the construct is, how long, things like that. So it's pretty uniform. So, and that's about it for economic development.
All right. Any questions for Brian? No. If not, let's move on to number 7. Lucy, approval of bills.
Bills, yes. Okay, so the first check run in the amount of $23,149.92. Second check run in the amount of $8,490.17 for a total of $31,640.09.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills in the amount of $31,640.09.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or concerns?
I have one bill over. Give me a sec. I have one bill that was over 5,000. That was for Village of Deerfield for the Dane County Sheriff's contract and gas. Everything else was under 5,000.
All right. If no questions, roll call, please.
Bruning,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Krecklow,
Yes.
Hollenbeck,
Yes.
Trendle,
Yes.
Blackwood,
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
All right.
And then just a quick update on treasurer. I had a meeting this morning with Eric Davidson from Bauman and Associates, who did our audit. I received the draft of the audit this morning, right before the meeting. We went over it in great depth. I did send out an email to everybody, Audit and Finance Committee, plus other board members, to see if any, and I know it's the week of the 4th of July, so we can look at the following week if that doesn't work for anybody. But he wanted to see on Tuesday, July 1st in the afternoon. The latest we could do is start at 4:30 to go over that on a Teams call. So let me know. I know a few people have responded they're out of town. If we don't have enough, we can look at the following week. And then he will be coming to the village board meeting on July 22nd to present to the entire board. That will be at a higher level, not quite as detailed because my very in-depth overview was 2.5 hours long today. So, and then the only other thing I wanted to add is in July, I will be doing some reporting for the packets. So it'll probably be the first, on the first packet of each month going forward. And I'm just working with Workhorse to determine which one. I'll probably be budget actuals that I do. Now, there are some other reports that I may include just to give more detailed information because budget actuals doesn't necessarily a lot of line items that were completely wiped out. Do you know, for 2025 that were just things that we definitely could not avoid. So that's I'm working on, and that'll be a work in progress, and I will be including some financial stuff and with the audit and that reconciliation from 2024 that I'll be entering soon. That'll also change the actual cash balances in 2025, if that makes sense. Finance is fun. But any questions for me on any of that?
So in the audit report, it was just a draft, so they'll go through and, because there were a couple areas they were obviously missing something because the field
Yes.
name was in there and not the actual data.
Exactly, so there was definitely, and when I went over it with him, he's like, yep, there's a few things that they knew they need to fix, and
Okay.
Since that time, I've gotten a few emails from them with some questions and just clarification. But as a whole, it is done, and all of the Department of Revenue reporting that was needed has been filed as well for the TID districts.
Any more questions for Lucy? If not, we're gonna move on to new business. Discussion and possible action regarding floodplain regulations ordinance. I remember a while back I mentioned that we're gonna do a review. We'll introduce an ordinance. This is our introduction, so if you could just take the next couple weeks to take a look at this floodplain regulations ordinance 15.60 and see if it makes sense, see if it meets our technical expertise, I guess, and then next board meeting we'll discuss it. So
And
It's a big one.
yeah, so I want to add on that, and again, I apologize, last week was just so packed. That came in to me, Mark McNally and Lisa were getting emails from the DNR regarding that. It came in to me right before Chris was coming in for the agenda, and I didn't know what it all entailed, but it has a deadline that is very, very soon. So the DNR is going to actually assist in this. They have all the information and all the updates. What I was hoping, though, I wanted you guys to look at what we currently have, which I sent to them, and then that way we can go over the updates. So we're not making changes, because this is kind of authorized by the DNR. And
So what we have in the packet is what our current ordinance is.
yes,
Okay, what's the ordinance that, when are we gonna get a copy of the ordinance that DNR is telling us we have to adopt?
you want to help me with
My
that?
understanding is that DNR is offering to help draft a new ordinance. There's actually
Oh,
an
okay.
administrative code that sets the standard. A lot of it follows statewide standards.
Okay,
And so DNR offers to help municipalities with an ordinance that would meet those statewide standards. And that's my understanding
Yes.
is that that's what they've offered to do here. They do it free of charge.
Yes.
so do we have to do anything in order to have them write it so that we can compare what their written one is to what we currently have?
Well, we have to have what they prepare.
Well, I get that, but it would still be, I would still like to see what we used to have versus what they're telling us. So I'd like to see what the differences are, you know what I mean?
I think we just have to accept their offer to help, and then I think it's still worth reviewing, because we've seen some other, with other municipalities, sometimes we see things that are in what DNR proposes that we think could use some tweaks, but that was my understanding of what they reached out to.
Yes.
Lisa
Give them
sent something a
They
couple
give them the
weeks
green
ago.
light, and then they say, well, send us what you have now, and then they tweak what we have
That's
now.
exactly, and I did already send them immediately, responded immediately with what we have now, and just, I will have to give them, if they need whatever information they need. I know they have some updated information regarding the wetlands and things like that.
So basically, they true up all this technical detail in this ordinance to make sure it's aligned with anything new or any other updates that haven't been done, or you got something in your 6 feet and it's supposed to be 5.5, whatever.
Yeah, what makes sense to me is maybe the decision by the board to say, yes, we do want DNR's assistance on this.
Okay.
Do we need to make that motion tonight?
Sure, yes.
Brian, do you want to make it?
I'll make a motion to direct staff to consult with DNR and work with them to update the ordinance for floodplain regulations, ordinance 15.60.
I'll second. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Great idea.
Great, let them do the work.
Yep.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Clear as mud?
Yep.
All right. All right. So we already took care of 8B, and so moves us down to 8C, Dane County Urban County Consortium Renewal. This was a letter that I received.
Yeah, I thought I included it in here.
It is.
It is.
Okay, thank you. And I got your question answered because you wanted to know what is the cost.
Right.
There's no cost.
Okay. So we got this from the,
There
was
it
it
is.
the state?
Dane County.
Dane
County Executive.
Executive, I guess. The positive part about it is it leaves us open for grant approvals. So,
No real downside of being available in case there's grants that come, right?
so I'll go ahead and make the motion to renew our Dane County Urban County Consortium for fiscal year 2026 through 2028.
I'll second.
All right, any questions?
And maybe, I don't know if someone can clarify this for me, but the last paragraph of the first page. Choosing to remain a member of the Dane County Urban County Consortium means that your municipality is not eligible to receive grants directly from the state CDBG program. As the county receives home funding, that means your municipality is also participating in the home program. So as a result, you may only receive a formula allocated under the home program as part of the urban county.
So we go through the county instead of the state.
Okay.
If we were like the biggest thing, you know,
I was
we
gonna
might be so big, we might go and apply instead of having the whole county do things like that.
Yeah, and because, I mean, we're not even considered urban, we're considered rural, aren't we? So would most of the stuff even apply to us? We'd be lucky if it does, so I guess going through the county would be easier than going directly to the state. for stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
All right. Anything else? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Next up is Jane, discussion regarding procedures for public meetings and legal duties for public officials.
You know what? The new Jane is Karen and
Karen.
Jane.
Oh, Karen and Jane, all right. Usually we've had these enclosed, but I had asked Lucy to reach out to Jane and see, do we necessarily need to have it? Because this is all kind of 101, Robert's Rules, kind of League of Municipality 101 training. So as you can see in the agenda, it is not enclosed, so everybody can learn a little something.
And in fact, I even have extra copies for members of the audience if anyone would want to follow along, because of course they're public records.
Thank you.
And I have some propaganda as well.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
I'll hand it over to Sharon, how about that?
Here's a
Thank you.
pocket guide for municipal to Wisconsin's open meeting laws.
Thank you.
One to Lucy.
I actually already have one of those, but this might be more updated.
And here's a pocket guide to Wisconsin State Ethics Code and Pecuniary Interest Prohibition.
Maybe we should we go around to the, maybe it's easier
Thank you.
to. Why
Over
don't we
here.
come to the table here?
Chris,
Would anyone like a handout?
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you. Okay.
ooh, okay, I don't have this one.
Oh, thank you. Ethics.
Oh, I need ethics, all right.
All of a sudden.
Sure.
All right, so I should actually introduce myself because I haven't met all of you. So I'm Jane Landretti, and this is Karen O'Day, and you should introduce yourself. Because I feel like I always do it, and it's probably better to hear what you have to say about your background.
Okay. I have been with Stafford since August of last year, doing the municipal work with the government team and a little bit of litigation. Prior to that, I was at the state DOJ for 3 years doing criminal appeals.
So very different work than now, but.
But Karen is really focusing a lot on municipal law. He's really, really sharp. We really like having him at Stafford. I'm doing more and more environmental work, so this is one reason that Kieran is coming with me. He may be your main point of contact here as we transition into new roles. So, but he's great on these kinds of issues for sure, and lots of other municipal issues that we pulled him into. But we've got this is a training outline that we often use. We kind of tweak it each year depending on things that we've seen come up. So we'll just talk through this, but I'd like it very much for it to be a conversation. You know, the things that land in here are the things that seem important to us, but you see other things, and so we'll just please chime in. I'll start here. So we wanted to just kind of talk about big picture, what are the roles of the different folks, because especially we started with village president. It's really not what a lot of people think. A lot of people think, oh, it's the head of the village president makes all the decisions, so we just need to get him over on our side on something. But really, it's very much, he is like the rest of the trustees, one of the collective, with just a few extra roles. And so, you know, to preside at the board meetings, we've got these in the bullet points there: maintain peace and good order.
How are you gonna do that?
Just Jackie.
He signs a lot of things, for sure, and appoints officers for committees. But other than that, he really is not different than other trustees and doesn't have special powers over the rest of you. And then village trustees also, I think, is a little bit different than what a lot of people think. They think, oh, if any one of you could just make a decision for the village, and it's really, the state statute it doesn't assign you any explicit powers except for your role as part of the collective. And so that's something that's hard sometimes for people to understand, but it's really kind of our something we return to often in all forms of village government, is just kind of returning to that narrative about how we're just all part of a collective decision.
Yeah,
and
the
it's
power lies in the group as a whole.
Yeah, so it's really great. I mean, this is obviously your prerogative, but one thing that is helpful is if, you know, once there's a village decision that is made, if, you know, it's a village decision. It's not something that I dissented from. You know, this is a legislative body, and it's a little different than the Supreme Court, where there are decisions and dissents, you know. So a lot of municipalities find that it's helpful if people sort of own the decisions that the group makes collectively. Okay, so moving on then to the administrator.
Hold on, Jane, can
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
like the third item under the village trustees, that we're a liaison between municipality and members, and that we refrain from directing staff or acting as a supervisor.
That's so.
So this is where, like, I understand Sandy Jankowski's frustration. And we as a board have directed our staff to take care of the stormwater ponds. I don't know how much more we can do as a board besides direct staff to take care of the ponds per the maintenance agreement. So I just wanted to point that out, that, I mean, there's really only so much we as a board can do, and then it becomes an administrative function.
That's such a great example. And we actually talk about a little bit more as we talk about the administrative role duty in there, but I thought that pond example was perfect as an illustration of a few points here that we'll
good.
make tonight.
Excellent, thank you.
So you're the legislative body, and then your administrator is like the executive branch here, carrying out the duties that you create for her. And so she's really the one who should be directing staff to carry out your direction and making those details, and that shouldn't have to be your role. And in fact, we don't want it to be your role to come in and tell a village employee what they should be doing. This is really that's really for Lucy and her staff to do. We want to talk about committees because this is another area where people have ideas that when there's a committee, that the committee has a lot of power and authority. And for the most part, the role of the committee is really to just make recommendations to the body as a whole. There's an exception here that will for plan commission that can actually make substantive decisions. They've got authority in the statute, but for the most part, these statute does not assign duties or authorities to those committees. They are really just there to inform you so that you can set the policy in an informed way. There, I put that again, board members should not normally assign tasks. It must have been important enough that I thought I had to put it in there in two different places.
Yes.
Okay, so then messaging on public expectations. This is another one where a situation like the pond would be a good example. Not that anybody made any representations to a person about what they will take on, but it's very tempting in many communities if somebody shares a concern. Oh, I've got this pond and it's a big problem. It can be tempting to want to help for sure. And to make representations about what the village will do. And there are tricky questions a lot of times about, well, does the village even own the ponds? In this case tonight, yes. But in a lot of cases, that's an open question that sometimes there's a dispute over, and sometimes sometimes members of the public have had the expectation that the village should help, and then we have to kind of put the brakes on that and realize, oh, it's not even our pond. And so retention ponds are a perfect example of that kind of thing where people, it performs a public purpose, and so it must be a village function. And there are many examples of things like that where it's just not true. It really does depend on their ownership. So let's see. Board members should be mindful of non-discretionary demands on staff time. I was thinking you do want to be responsive to all the people who are bringing in their individual requests, but it does sometimes, I think, to many board members feel like, gosh, no matter what we spend our time on, there are people who are mad that we're not spending our time on something else. So that is really a leadership role it's a tough thing for village trustees to have to set those priorities, even if there are people in the room asking for different priorities. It's a big role that you have. And then, there again on number 3, there at the top of page 3, just avoid the temptation to make promises for those things that we just have to make collectively as a board. And I put 4 as a different point because of that confusion. Often there are so many situations where people feel like their village, intuitively they feel like village issues, but they're often not. Maybe they're state issues, maybe they're private issues. A lot of times that becomes a fact-intensive situation there are mistaken assumptions sometimes made about what we can promise as
we have
a
the added
village.
fun too of having 2 counties representing us too, so it could be a county issue as well. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I cut you off, Paula. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and what is within our purview and what is not. We had an example. We had a business owner that was unhappy with what his tenant was doing in the building. He came to us at the village, and it's like, there's really nothing we can do. This is an agreement between you and your tenant. So, there's even though they come to us and they think we might be able to do something, a lot of times it's like, that's not within what we can work with.
Yeah.
And if you're ever in question, is this something we should be addressing or not, that's when we talk to Lucy, our administrator, and Lucy will reach out to our legal counsel if she needs to find out if that's something that we should be taking on.
So if there's no other thoughts on that, we can move on to open meetings. Boy, Wisconsin is a really strong sunshine state. You know, there is a very strong presumption that meetings should be open. So I would just talk a little bit about what constitutes a meeting, because that's actually kind of a tricky thing sometimes. But when there is a meeting, it has to be preceded by public notice. It has to be held in places that people can reasonably attend. And again, the presumption is that it's open to the public unless we can fall into one of those very specific statutory reasons to close the meeting. So here's another source of confusion often. I get it more as at the state agency, people would want to know why they couldn't attend a meeting when it was, you know, with certain staff people. This can happen with the village too. If somebody's meeting with Lucy, well, why can't I attend that? That's a open meeting, right? And I mean, certainly there might be situations where you invite people to attend, but it's not a public meeting in the sense of what triggers the open records law, which is a meeting of the public body. So there's under B there, that means a body of the board, a commission, a committee, a council, anything where the entity can make a decision to govern. That's what triggers the public meeting requirement. So there's actually the meeting is actually presumed to be happening if there is we look at that two-part test in Wisconsin. So we look at, are you gathering for the purpose of discussing business, and are there enough of you to constitute a quorum? And if that's true, then you really need to make sure that you've public noticed that meeting. And so here's where it gets a little tricky sometimes, is if you want to have some discussions amongst yourselves because there are items coming up, that is okay as long as you don't generate what we call a walking quorum. So Kristen can definitely talk to Paula about an issue and just like, oh, we've got this thing coming up with the village board. You two can confer. But what you can't do is call Brian and then call Sharon and then call, you can't get enough of you in on a conversation, even in a chain conversation, so that you're effectively having the meeting outside of the public noticed meeting. So that's what we call a walking quorum. So I just want to make it clear, it doesn't mean you can't talk to each other, and it doesn't even mean you can't talk to each other about village business. It just means you just have to be very careful that there aren't enough of you in on the conversation to constitute a quorum.
And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, an email chain, like responding to all or responding, those are types of things that can fall under that walking.
That is a very, very great point. And yep, we've got a paragraph on that too, because that is probably the most common way that it happens, because people don't think about it. Of course, like if you're gathered, it's pretty obvious that that you're gathered for a meeting, but the email, if you would all be emailing with each other, that's the kind of thing that we just can't have, because that is communication that needs to happen in an open meeting. So to your point, Kristen, when I've sent, sometimes a memo to the entire board, I've just put everybody on BCC so that nobody can accidentally reply to my memo. You can't accidentally reply to blind copied people, so that's why I do that.
That's something I should do, because I have.
Yeah, you need to get in that habit, Lucy.
Got it.
Yeah, BCCS.
Okay.
And then that does apply to committees and as well, right? You have to be careful about the
Exactly.
walking quorum, because like on the water and sewer board, it's made up of 5 people, so 3 would be a quorum.
Thank you for that point. It's a really important point, especially because those committees are so small that only 3 people, 3 people can constitute a walking quorum, which is impermissible. If the 3 of you are talking about something that is related to the committee.
Right, right.
Right. So One thing that is not a meeting, though, the Attorney General has said, is if, you know, a constituent sends all of you a message, a letter, it's just a one-way communication, that's fine. You're not talking about it amongst yourselves, you're just receiving a communication. That's totally fine. And if, you know, a social gathering, that's fine too. If you all happen to be, if one of you gets married and everybody's there at the ceremony and you're not talking about the business, you don't have to public notice that just because you're all there. But you know, one thing that is, this comes up sometimes when we all have, like, we'll have all the communities that are part of the IGA, we'll gather. We public notice that as a meeting because we are all gathered to talk about village business, even though we don't have our own agenda often. We think that's a good practice.
So that also applies even if it's a closed session item that's was previously discussed?
Great question. You still have to public notice it, and actually Karen is going to talk a little bit about the closed session, but yes, you have to public notice the meeting for sure, and then there's some new requirements about going into closed session as a result of some new case law. But yeah, great question. And then, you know, sometimes there's questions about how detailed an agenda has to be, and especially when you're going into closed session. And the Attorney General has given guidance on this. It's pretty vague, you know, because it's tricky sometimes because we don't know exactly how the discussion will go, or we're supposed to be as detailed as we can be, as necessary to just give the general public notice about what we're talking about. So we try to be as detailed as we can be, but also without limiting ourselves. When we're creating an agenda, we don't want to unnecessarily limit, because we really shouldn't talk about things that aren't on the agenda. So that's always a tricky balance. Okay. Oh, and you know, we should just talk about public comment. This used to be more of an issue in the village. It hasn't really come up as much now. We've got a president who maintains good peace and order. But there are a lot of times people will want to come to public comment and want to ask questions of village board members and really want to engage. And it's very tempting to want to respond to those questions, but what you heard tonight was really the right response to those questions. Like, yes, we can put this on a village agenda for discussion, but it should be public noticed as an agenda item before we start getting into the discussion. Otherwise, we avoid the noticing. Yeah, so that's why we're pretty careful about that with public comment, not to engage in the back and forth, just because we want you to decide as a village, is this something you want to have on the agenda? You know, it's your job, as your prerogative as the leadership.
And my response might be different than the whole, you know, so as tempting as it is, you have to take a step back and say, well, we can discuss it further, because it really should be the whole body that discusses that response.
Exactly. And I would say there's a lot of questions that come to you all that wouldn't be your job to know, the technical things about a pond or all kinds of things that really the process as it works should be for Lucy to, you know, to find out. If you decide that it's important to engage in that, Lucy should find out from the right technical people. You as board members shouldn't have to know anything about the details of a pond unless you decide that you want to. But there need not be that expectation. Okay, so like we said earlier, there's just those very few specific reasons that we can go into closed session, and so it's important that we notice that ahead of time. So now here's where I'm going to turn it over to Karen, because there's some new case law even since the last time that we were here, and so we're kind of changing our advice to municipalities at Stafford about how we go into closed session. Karen, if you want to talk through that.
Yeah, so like Jane said, the presumption is open. If you want to go into closed, there are 11 exemptions under section 1985 sub 1 of the statutes. So like and those are strictly construed. The courts are not, like Jane said, we're very sunshine state. So, like for this, like Chris said, this type of thing used to be enclosed. If somebody wanted to challenge that, that challenge would probably be successful because the conferring with legal counsel exception is related to oral or written advice concerning strategy with respect to litigation. So that's not this.
Yeah, we actually don't usually do this in closed session. We just usually do it in a special session so the poor members of the public don't have to listen if they don't want to. But they would always be welcome to, because that's right. It is for the conferring with legal counsel is just when litigation is anticipated.
So how we've been suggesting noticing it is putting in the agenda exactly which exemption it falls under instead of just an agenda item that says possible closed session, saying pursuant to this exception, we're contemplating going into closed session. The real upshot of the decision from the Court of Appeals was that any discussion on background leading up to why the body might be going into closed session needs to be happening in open session. So it can't just be, we have paragraph E is typically the one that results in a closed session, and that's the bargaining exception for public contracts. So it can't just be, we have this contract, potential contract, we want to go into closed, we have a motion to go into closed, no discussion on the record beforehand. There needs to be that discussion of everything leading up to going into closed beforehand. And really, especially for paragraph E, that's what the case was about. And the Court of Appeals said that the body really has to be left with no other option than to go into closed session to protect the public's competitive or bargaining interests. So if there's really no need to discuss the offer price or negotiation strategy or something like that, there's really not a reason to go into closed.
So I have an example from a few years ago, for those of you who are new on the board, when we were negotiating with Oakland about Blue Jay Way, and we were maintaining that we maintained the roads, but that didn't mean rebuilding the roads, like, because it was determined that had to be done. We were talking about it in an open session, and I suggested, so all of the background information would be appropriate to say in open session. But then we were going to talk about, we had a meeting on the books with Oakland, and we were going to talk about what our stance was going to be at that meeting. And I suggested we go into closed session, and our president at this time said no. So we had an open session, and then when we got there to discuss with them, they surprised us with a statement saying, we talked to the state and you guys need to annex the road.
Yeah, they served us.
They served us with like papers, and we're like, oh, okay. So no discussion. So, I mean, at that point, there was no reason to have the meeting.
Right.
So had we gone into closed session, I think, to discuss just that one piece of it, I think that probably would have worked out better in our favor as a board. So that's just an example.
Yeah, that's a really good example.
I can remember.
Jane, I have a question.
Yeah.
So for closed session, so we'll be going out for an RFP for building inspection soon. So now we have the proposals. They're already in, they're not being negotiated. Does that still need to be closed?
Oh, you can do the bid opening in open session, certainly. Yeah, yeah. The significance of this case really is to say, look, you should decide at the time, yes, we really meet this high standard for needing to go into closed session for an example like what Paula said. And it caused a kerfuffle among the League of Municipalities, because this is different than most municipalities operate. Usually we kind of decide when we're making the agenda if this is going to be legitimate for closed session. So this court set a higher standard than most people would used to think about what it takes to get into closed session for bargaining.
So let me ask you a question. I think this came up during a fire and EMS commission meeting while I was on the commission, and it didn't seem right to me, and obviously it ticked off some of the folks that had waited hours and hours for us to come out of closed session. But when we came out of closed session, the motion was made that we would vote on, it was very vague. It was very vague, and we will vote on whatever was discussed in closed session in the positive, or whatever. It was really vague like that. Does this new Attorney General's, or the new legislation, or whatever it was, the ruling, does that have anything to do with how in depth you have to be coming out of closed session?
I think the ruling doesn't change how bad that practice would be.
Yeah.
That was new, but how does it apply to, how much language has to be given of explanation for a closed session decision if they're gonna be taking action?
Yeah, you know, it's a lot like the agenda language. I think it should reasonably apprise the public of what it is. You should decide in closed session on what cryptic language you're going to use to avoid disclosing anything in the vote. If you're voting on something, then you've had presumably the discussion that you needed to. You had the privilege of getting to go into closed session, and now you're making a decision, and I think the public should get to know what decision you as a board are making.
Yeah. Okay. So it should be as descriptive as possible, but
So
maybe not naming names, or maybe just titles, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
So we've come out of like closed session when it has to do with like personnel and maybe salary ranges, and say, I make a motion to hire so-and-so at the salary range we discussed in closed session. Now, we know it's public record, so people can find out what that salary is at some point. We just didn't want to advertise it in the meeting minutes.
Yes, and I think that's totally fair. And I feel like I was giving kind of a mealy-mouthed answer to this question about how specific do you have to be, because what you don't have to do is defeat the purpose of going into closed session in the first
Got it.
place.
Okay, that makes
by
sense.
disclosing all the details that you came up with. Yeah, but I think the example of we are going to hire this person at you're telling the public if they want to go find out more, fine. You're not hiding the ball on what decision you are making.
You open it up, go into
Yeah.
closed session with what you're opening up and going into closed session about. You come out of closed session, you should be on the record of voting on something substantial that relates to that. It doesn't have to have every detail, but it's got to have something that you're like,
Yeah, it can't just be like whatever we discussed.
whatever we
talked
discussed.
You know, that thing we
Nobody
talked
knows
about.
what you discussed. How will we know
That
why
was
you're
a
voting
legit-
yes or no?
A legit vote, by the way.
Wow.
That was a legit vote.
That's crazy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So you said there's 11 exceptions. Are they listed somewhere in here?
Not in this packet, I think it's in the statute.
Yeah, in the
So
statute.
Okay. Was that any change, or the same 11?
The same number that there always
Okay.
have been, it's just a higher standard to
Okay.
go in. Any other thoughts on open meetings, closed meetings, before we move on to just a brief talk about ethics? So,
The closed session should just be the exception to the rule, though. It shouldn't be on every agenda, so.
very much, that's right.
Are there specific things that cannot be discussed in closed session that have to be open session?
The statute doesn't put it in that way,
Okay.
because anything that would be there would be bargaining reasons, so it could be any kind of subject, bargaining reasons or personnel issues. So it's really more of the judgment call on the type of
Okay,
what you're doing with that information.
okay.
Is
Any
there
thoughts?
is there construct to the closed session, like it only has to be members of the board and staff. It can't be anybody else brought into any of that stuff or anything other.
Oh, so this is interesting. I think the different attorneys have different opinions on that. I actually think that it's okay to bring in someone from the outside to answer questions, to help inform the board.
In
I don't
closed
know if-
session.
In closed session.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that some attorneys disagree with me on that. I don't know. I don't have enough.
Karen,
Karen,
how
that
do you
question.
feel about that?
I don't have a strong opinion on it.
Great.
It's a good lawyer answer.
I did have another thought, but, and then the other thing, if you're going into closed for a specific reason, the closed should be tailored to that, and if you start drifting away, the motion should be made, the motion to
Yes.
adjourn the closed should be made,
Slap
go back
hands
into
have to happen,
open,
yes. Yep.
and so, like, make your definitive decision in closed, and then adjourn and discuss anything else in open.
And we also cannot email the full board in regards to a closed session item after the fact.
Thank you for saying that. We should not
I
actually
slipped on that
talk
'cause
about
okay.
anything that we talk about in closed session stays in closed session.
Okay.
It's definitely what we should.
Thank you.
What we should practice. Great point about that.
So if we, because this has been discussion now several times with the commission, if we have a discussion of, it's like employment performance and something else, are you specifically limited to, like, say if we're going in and talking about, I don't know, somebody's conduct, and then something else comes up on another person, you know, not at all related to what the original discussion was supposed to be about. And one of the things that I thought, and Chris, you can kind of attest to this too, it's like when we address some of these where it's like personnel. Okay, well, what's the personnel? You know, you identify the subsection, but there's no definition of what you're going in to talk about. So how do you limit what is discussed under there?
So how I read the opinion was, it really depends on the language of which exemption you're using. Like the bargaining one is, the end of it says, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, so it's really, we have no other option than to go into closed. The personnel one is a little more wishy-washy, and because it's just considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. So it's a lot more open-ended. It's not as concrete as the bargaining one. So I think if you're discussing one person and another person comes up, that's probably fine and falls under that same.
Thanks for a long closed session.
Yeah, it does.
All right, so we can move on to ethics. There was just the point that I want to really drive home on the ethics duties that you all have. You know, so you're acting, your ethical duties come in your private capacity. You know, this is a tricky thing sometimes. You know, I, as the village attorney, or Karen, as the village attorney, can't really get you out of hot water if you do something to violate the ethics duties. Because that's something you do in your personal capacity, and they apply to you in your personal capacity. So if you would do something that would be very bad, that would be a violation of the ethics rules, you are not acting in your village capacity then. You don't get the sovereign immunity protections against suit, so you can be held accountable for a violation of the ethics rules, because by doing so you're stepping out of your hat as a village trustee and stepping into something that would give you, for example, financial gain. But here's the thing, what's baked into the ethics rules is there is an understanding, of course you're gonna benefit, you're here in a small community, of course you're gonna benefit just like everybody else does when you make good policy decisions. You don't have to worry too much about conflicts of interest that just benefit, you know, your neighborhood is gonna be better after we have this program. You know, the ethics rules are really looking for you know, gaining from a contract that you enter into, you know, as a, it's really looking for that financial gain and that connection to financial gain. There's a huge oversimplification of the ethics rules, but that's what they boil down to. And so a lot of times people are concerned about, oh, can I vote on something that's going to affect my neighborhood? Or, you know, yes, it's only when you're pulled out from similarly situated people that we look at those ethics issues.
It's like I'm part of the Midwest Fire Fest, the committee that puts it on. But I don't recuse myself from any votes related to the Midwest Fire Fest.
I live in the Vineyards. The Vineyards comes up almost every meeting. I
There you go.
excuse myself out of the meeting for
Correct.
every time, so.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, so back to the finance theme, you know, along with not voting on something, nobody should be giving you anything of value in your capacity as the village, as a village trustee. People shouldn't be buying you gifts, those kinds of things, unless they're your friend. They shouldn't be giving you gifts as a trustee. So please don't accept gifts of value because that could be an ethics violation. And then if you do have, it's just very important that you abstain from any official action on any kind of contract that would affect you or your family.
Can you speak to who can determine what a conflict of interest is for you?
Yes, that's a great question. So because we represent the village as a whole, to the point earlier about how that's your duty as an individual. We can't really give you legal advice about what you can do or can't do ethically, or at least we're not supposed. I mean, it's something that a private attorney could do, but there's an ethics commission. What happens a lot of times, people do have legitimate questions that are really tricky, and you can put in a fact scenario to the ethics commission, you know, saying, okay, here's the situation. I own land here, but it's not really related to the trend. You know, you can just give them a fact scenario, and they'll give you an opinion. And if the opinion says you're good, then that gives you cover. So even though we
Who do
can't
you
give you
ask that
direct
of?
advice,
Who did you say to ask?
the ethics, there's a, yeah.
Oh, got it.
Berger is his name, and I can't remember his exact role, but there's when that comes up, we put you in touch with the right person to ask for an opinion on that. Sometimes we'll make, you know, given just a very general, we try to help how we can without, while maintaining our role as counsel for the village as a whole. But there's always resources, and we make sure people are well informed of what they should do. And then it's up to them whether they follow it or not. We can't, if you have a potential conflict of interest, I can't, as the village attorney, can't advise you. I can't tell you you have to abstain. You know, that's not my role, because it's your duty as a private individual. Right? So I don't have authority to make you abstain.
So Paula, you can't, unfortunately, you can't accept that jet.
So close, Chris. So close.
All right.
And then finally, we just wanted to talk about parliamentary procedure. We were at Karen and I were both at the Municipal Attorneys Conference a couple weeks ago, and there was a very detailed presentation put on by the League about parliamentary Robert's Rules of Order. And I know that, Jennifer, we've talked about, there are different boards make very different decisions about how strict they want to follow the Robert's Rules of Order. And so really all I wanted to say is, you as a village can decide. We've been pretty relaxed about it in this village, and frankly, most villages that I've worked with, and you know, of smaller size, they tend to be more relaxed because they think the conversation flows. But it is a choice to be made, and it was interesting. The presenter at this conference was saying, look, the whole point of Robert's Rules is to maintain this decorum, and if we don't follow Robert's rules, then people are gonna fight more often. And I thought, well, you know, maybe so the message that I just wanted to send about this, I mean, we could be as detailed as or as loose as we want, and we're happy to kind of share, you know, the Robert's rules. But I think it's up to you as a village to decide, you know, how important that is. On the one hand, some people have said, look, there's enough barriers to entry. It's hard enough to get people to want to be on the village board. The last thing we need to do is like follow this super formal process where they can't speak out of order and they have to like say things in a very precise way. And you know, there's a reasonable people can disagree on how strictly we should follow Robert's rules. And so I just wanted to plant that seed that it's up to you. If you feel like as a board you would be better following the rule where everything should be addressed to whomever is chairing the meeting, and then the president decides who gets to speak next, we could do that.
That
But-
sounds exhausting.
Like the talking stick, you have to pass the talking stick.
So if there's not a desire to change course on the sort of the flow that we have, we don't have to go into the details of what some of the rules are.
I think it's important to notice that, because there are different flavors. Like you go to a Rockdale meeting, you go to Oakland meeting, you get different. It's good to go and just attend those meetings to kind of see how they do things. But it's also important for us, because there was some things that my predecessor did that kind of would annoy me. The round robin straw vote thing, I was never a big fan of that. I don't want to have to pull. I don't want to have to pull information from it. If you feel like you need to talk, then just raise your hand or whatever. If you need to say something, say something. But I don't want to have to, well, what do you think, Brian? Well, what do you think, Sharon? Well, what do you, I've never really been a big fan of that. So maybe you're not thinking about it. Maybe it's the furthest thing from your mind. But I don't want to have to put you on the spot like that.
And remember, before Chris will call for a vote, he will always say, all right, I have a motion and a second. So at that time, if you don't feel like you got your point out, speak up before he calls for the vote. That's always the time when you can interrupt Chris and say, hey, I've got something more to say.
That's a really good point. That seems like a really healthy balance of what to follow.
Consistent and fair, then it's the same. It's like when some of those discussions get into, well, what do you think? It's like you're somebody's directing or trying to drive an opinion or other things. That's where I think it gets.
Sometimes you might not have an opinion.
Exactly, you just might not have an opinion on the topic.
Yep.
But I would always try to give people, and I was told that a couple meetings, hey, give people a little bit more time so they can collect their thoughts, because if you just drive through like you're an auctioneer going through these, okay, I got a motion in a second, then give people time to actually think about what they're about to vote on. So if I ever don't do that, please remind me, Paula.
And I think that's especially important for conversations like, you know, I remember being a new board member, Brian, I'm sure you guys as well too. You know, you hear the motion, you hear the second, and you're literally just trying to process what's being told.
Definitely.
You know, and you're like, wait, do I have a thought? I don't know. Wait, do I have a thought? And then all of a sudden it's like, is there a vote? You know, let's vote. And everybody's like, whoa, wait a minute, you know, time out. What am I even voting on? You know, so I think it's important to have that pause after the second motion.
It helps Lucy too when she's taking her minutes and everything too. So.
Well, that sounds good for now. If you ever decide you're arguing too much or you need to change dynamics and you want to start having like, Kieran can do some training on Robert's rules.
All 800 pages. Oh my God.
Thank you very much.
Insane. With this presentation blew my mind. I can't imagine a body of people who would actually know all of that and follow it. It was really mind blowing that so many rules exist.
I do have a quick question though for Robert's Rules of Order. if I want to have an item brought up at the next meeting, do I table it or do I postpone it?
This is
Because those are
such a
two
great question.
specific, different terms in Robert's Rules of Order, isn't it?
I was just looking at the cheat sheet for, because I know this comes up very often. We always argue, do we table it?
Do we table it or postpone it?
So here's what I read on the cheat sheet
Yeah.
about that, is that tabling it makes it just go away. You say it as kind of an adversarial way to just get it off, so you're not actually postponing it. You're not actually effectively saying it's gonna go on another meeting. You're saying we're done here, is my
That's
read
table.
of the.
Okay, so postpone, hey, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this to the next meeting for discussion.
That's what I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
postpone. Good,
Do you
thank
agree?
you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
That's good, that's a good
I've been
clarification.
tabling things left and right.
But yet we bring them back, so are we breaking our own rules? Or, you know, what's happening? But, okay, so postpone.
All right. Well, I think that is about everything. Any,
Did we go through the public
Oh,
records law?
public records, I could spend days on.
Oh,
boy,
I bet
yeah.
you could. I could be so quick with public records, because I know
Yeah.
that we've been talking
Well,
for a long time.
Some of us are very experienced with the public records requests.
Everything's a record. Everything that you do as a governmental official is a record, and you just can't throw it away. However, the thing I'll say is that Lucy is going to be the custodian of everything that you have in your capacity as a board member. So for the most part, you know, your meeting packets, you don't have to keep those kinds of things. But if a constituent sends you something, you really should keep a record of that as a meeting. If you are the holder of it, you're the one who has it. You could send it to Lucy and she can hold it. But you are officially the custodian, and you really should not dispose of records. So we can boil it all down to that. I mean, we can talk a lot more, but I think that's.
That's why a lot of times when I had conversations directly with a constituent, I would CC in Lisa so that Lisa had a record of the conversation as well. So if there was ever a question for open records, then, you know, Lisa would be able to find the email as well.
So thank you. I know that was a lot, and thank you for your patience in working through that. But we
This is
do like
good.
to cover those things once a year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Jane. Oh, and by the way, while we were in, I looked up the statute that has the 11. I sent it to
forwarded it
Lucy.
to
You
everybody.
already forwarded it? Okay, great. Thank you, Lucy.
BCC, I heard.
Oh, you BCC'd it. Look at you learning.
all right, moving on to 8E, 2025 Wisconsin Municipal Clerks Association Annual Conference Scholarship. And this is yours, Lucy.
Yeah, so I put in the packet, just the scholarship information is in here, and it'll show that I need to submit a letter from the board with the application confirming the municipality's support of my attendance. If we do have a clerk onboarded with enough time, I would like to send them to this. Otherwise, I will go to it. It is a very good learning opportunity, and any of these trainings that have scholarships available, my intention is to always apply, always. I know that there's a training budget, but if we can get assistance, absolutely. So who would like, well, first of all, just
Make a motion that we send a letter confirming our support of a staff's attendance at the 2025 WMCA Annual Conference.
I'll second.
Now, who wants to write it? Or Lucy, do you want to write it and just have Chris sign it?
Sure,
Right.
it's fine.
Okay, perfect. It only has to be like 3 sentences.
It's just saying that you,
Hey, look, we voted right here.
yes.
Yes.
Well, and then just all those in favor, Chris?
Yeah. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. We'll get that scholarship yet. Moving on to 8F, Resolution 2025-04. On our licensing committee.
Yes, so this is just the resolution. These are, all of these licenses included in this resolution have all had background checks, have all gone to the licensing committee, with recommendation to go to the board for approval.
I will make a motion to approve Village of Cambridge Resolution number 2025-04 for a resolution the Village Board of Trustees granting alcohol and tobacco retail licenses as listed.
I will second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for Resolution 25-04.
Is there any changes from before?
Other changes, any add-ons?
I didn't think so, I just wanted if there were.
I don't see any new.
Think so.
Okay.
The
No,
only
it's
one
pretty much the same, as last year, and then I had some stragglers just come in, so those will have to just go straight to the board.
Okay.
So you'll be seeing a few other licenses come up as one-offs.
And the individual we discussed that we had in
Yep.
the closed session, that's
Yep.
on here, right? And-
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Resolution 2025-04 passes. Moving on to Resolution 2025-06, relating to the 2024 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report. I believe that's something Derek's working on?
Derek and I worked on it together, and Vicky. So it is all ready to be submitted. They just need a resolution, which I have created. This is an annual process. I will need you, Chris, if passed, to sign this resolution. But the CMAR, it's all ready to be submitted once we have the resolution and the data with the signed document.
And it's really just a report that we do annually
Yes.
that talks about maintaining our sewer system and, yeah,
Cycling
yeah,
and
yeah,
something else.
yeah, stuff that we do with that good kind of stuff.
And so
Sewage collection.
the CMAR and the CCR are both due at the end of this month, and the CCR's already been completed and posted on our website. And that is the, help me out, Paula, that is the,
Oh, for
yeah,
what?
the CCR, the clean,
Oh,
oh my God.
it's, I don't have it either. Clean,
It's reporting. It is, all of this is, it's DNR reporting for water.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-06, relating to the 2024 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, and I will sign that paperwork. Moving on to 8H, job description for clerk deputy treasurer position. And I believe that's in our packet.
Yes, it is.
Thought it looked great.
I fixed the semicolon, Paula. That was
Thank you so much.
one suggestion.
It's the first time I read that sentence, I'm like, oh my gosh, the position is going to be filled with applications? Wow! No, Paula, you're reading it wrong.
I thought it was very detailed. I thought
Yes,
it
I
was
love
a
it.
very good roadmap for
Expectations and,
the benchmarks,
yep,
things like that.
love it.
So we need a motion to approve that so we can post it.
Yes.
I will make a motion to approve the Village of Cambridge, Wisconsin job posting for the clerk deputy treasurer position as written.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you for that. work on that. And then 8I, discussion about Oakland rejoining IGA. Paul, this is you.
Yeah, so I don't, I mean, because they're gonna need to decide, like, what direction they're going, like, July 1st is what I saw. And so I was wondering if we have reached out to them at all, or if the Village of Cambridge, because it's not a commission thing, if the Village of Cambridge has reached out to them at all and asked them if they would rejoin the IGA.
Could you tell me again what the IGA and
Intergovernmental Agreement for
Okay.
Fire and EMS.
I should write it down.
Good. It'll come to you. Look at-
Is it up to us to go, hey, Oakland, are you wanna get, have they ever come back and said they're interested in coming back in?
Some
So then
members-
what's the point?
Some
That's
members of the board are, is
okay.
what I've been told.
So I feel
On,
like
on
that would
conditions or?
be that their board collectively would have to come back and talk to these. I feel like that's on them to come back and start the conversation.
They had a
If
bunch
they-
of conditions and a bunch, they wanted to have this and and if we're not even in the same ballpark, then.
It wasn't they,
Right.
though. It was an Oakland Cambridge decision that, we paid a lot of money
Yeah.
to come up with changes to the IGA. And that was just to get the conversation started, but
Right.
then it was like, well, we don't, this whole voting thing that
Yeah.
Oakland wants is a non-starter for us,
Yep.
so we're not even gonna look at it.
Mhm.
That's what the other municipalities said. Yeah. So, again, so the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I am concerned we will not be able to have EMS services if the Village of Cambridge has to pay 50% of the cost of EMS services. Because we cannot afford it. If we could cut every staff member, and we can't because by statutes, we have to have at least one, two, gotta have the two at least. So we could cut, I mean, that's what it would take in order for us to afford 50% of our EMS.
From my perspective, I think it's bad form to beg the municipality to come back because we can't afford their services. I think if we are going to create something that is going to be attractive to that municipality to come back in, we have to take the ownership of changing practice of changing procedure, showing positive change, which we're trying. I mean, we're only 2 meetings in, unfortunately, in the commission, but, I feel like we've made multiple positive changes just in those 2 meetings. But any changes, my personal opinion is any changes that we make have to be mutually beneficial to all municipalities involved, not just Oakland.
Number one, I didn't say we'd beg them
No,
to come back. Okay, so let me get that straight. I didn't say we'd beg them. I just wanted them to know they have another option besides what they're doing today. And their other option would be to rejoin the IGA, since we've changed out who is on the commission. I think there are a lot of positive changes that are happening there.
I would agree with you.
And I just don't know if they're aware of that. And so I was wondering if maybe we should write all of the board members a letter, letting them know that that's the case. And then they have the information and they can choose to do with what they will.
Have they has anybody attended any of the meetings last couple times? So that
There's
kind of
been-
signals that, like, they just kind of move in their direction. So that's-
There's been constituents from Oakland who have come. There has been constituents from Oakland who have reached out to the commission, asking to be part of the decision-making processes and goes along those lines. And the consensus is Oakland is not a part of the commission, so therefore they really can't be part of the decision making. My suggestion would be if there are members, because I know I know for sure there's one member of Oakland Board who's interested in rejoining. I feel like that's got to be a decision that the Oakland Board has to start discussing. I believe they are aware of the positives that we are doing on the commission.
See, that statement right there, you believe they are aware. But it doesn't mean they are aware. So maybe we should tell them about the positive things. That was my only suggestion. Because we can't just assume everyone on the Oakland Board is paying attention to what's happening at our fire EMS.
Invite them to invite the board to the public at the next meeting. They'd be invited.
I think the letter to their board would be a little bit more advantageous, because that way they can present it as correspondence during their meeting, and that way everybody gets a fair shape at knowing where we stand.
That's kind of why I was thinking of letter to the whole board.
Yeah. I think that would be the smart way to go.
I don't know, Kristen, I want you to make sure you have your say, because if you really think that's a bad move.
No, I don't
In that
necessarily.
letter, you could spell out what good things are going on. So you're not presuming anything. You're actually saying, well, we got to change it hard, and there's people in place that are, we're moving in the right direction. Here are the positives that we're doing, and that could be spelled out in that particular letter. It's sent to via Lucy to the Oakland Board as a whole. And that way, when they have their next meeting, there's no ambiguity of, well, do they want us? Do they not want us? It pretty much spells it out from a Cambridge standpoint.
And I guess that would be my only question. Is this on Cambridge specifically to do, or is it on the commission to do?
No, it's not the commission.
Not on the commission.
This is because the commission is the other municipalities could also write a letter to Oakland saying they should be interested in having them come in. I mean,
It would be great
quite
if all of
frankly,
them did, then that would make,
quite frankly, I'd love to write a letter to Deerfield and say, Deerfield, why don't you ditch your connection with Cottage Grove and come over here with us instead?
That will be a small
I know that, but what I'm saying is, because we know in order to maintain the EMS service people are expecting, we have to have more people involved in this group and paying for it.
Yeah.
So I would reach out to any municipality in the surrounding area that we could possibly cover and say, hey, would you be interested in joining us for EMS service?
Yeah. But I also see Kristen's point too, where it's not. It's very nuanced in the fact that we can't say, hey, Oakland, we want this back for your money.
I personally think it would sound like begging in a roundabout way.
I don't know.
But I mean, that's really.
We could inform that there's new meetings and they're happening on regular occasions, and there's new president.
And there's talks of IGA changes.
Read our
changes,
minutes and things are
there's,
going
you know,
on.
I mean, we do have, I think, positive things to offer Oakland that could be attractive. I think one of the things we have to do as a commission, regardless of whether it's 4 communities or 5 communities, is take how drastically hard to look at that budget. So, even theoretically with 5 communities, it's not sustainable the way that it's presented. And so, in the next month or 2, which I know is pushing Oakland's.
You have to make a decision on when in July.
I thought they only had to give 120 days, but I could be wrong.
Someone said so on the Cambridge page, it was posted as July 1st. So I don't know if that's accurate or not.
And I don't,
Well, if it's that short, there's not even a time for a meeting or decision
our
of
next meeting isn't
anything,
until
so-
July 23rd.
so we'll-
So, I don't know what the right answer is there, because I know that other members of the other communities have reached out to Oakland, and it was taken as, we want you back because we can't afford it. It was true. We can't. I don't know how to present it.
I don't
in
think
a way
we're
that
offering a
isn't
whole lot of
financially
anything that
tied.
was really offered before, other than, hey, maybe it'll work out better, you know what I mean?
Right.
We can't really come back and say, we got our budget, this is what it's
No.
gonna be, we don't have any of those things.
I mean,
I can give you the scenario that I had at, I went to a local restaurant that happens to be on the Oakland side. And the restaurant owner came up and said, hey, we had a fire inspection from the Fort Atkinson. And he was very concerned about that. And I listened to what he had to say, and he went to the fire inspector and the chief or what and said, hey, how long did it really take to get either Lake Mills or Fort Atkinson? And he said, X amount of minutes to get here. And my advice to him was, hey, if you are concerned about this, you need to take it to the Oakland board. You need to take your concerns to the board so they know that you're concerned about if there is a fire, that you'll lose your restaurant, and whatever the case. But I just think right now there's only a few people yelling and jumping up and down and screaming, and whereas if it's more folks, I think they can kind of get an idea of what they need to do. So I think Oakland's still knee deep in an audit too. So there's kind of a holding pattern, stop on any kind of decision-making process until that audit is complete. So,
And they've expressed more than my budget concerns with everything in this, so I don't know if that's changed, so. Or the
one of the things that I have a vision, if you will, is the current IGA says the majority of municipalities has to pass a budget. I would like to see a unanimous discussion or approval of that budget, because I don't believe it's good practice for us to dictate Rockdale's budget, to dictate anyone else's budget. I think each municipality has to be responsible for their own, and I think that knowing that it has to be a unanimous decision puts a lot of pressure on the commission as a whole to draft a budget that is responsible.
Because if one municipality doesn't approve it, like we've been known to do, they have to go back to the
They
drawing
have to go
board.
back to the drawing board, and and there again, my opinion, and it isn't just, oh, okay, well then we'll revert back to the 2020 budget or whatever it is we work off. You know, if that budget is rejected by the municipality, any municipality, it's got to go back to the commission for continued work.
But there has to be an end of some sort, otherwise one municipality will just say no on every single time. You will be reverting back to whatever is the default.
Right.
And that's the danger, you're actually making it easier for one community to just get a new board and stalemate everything.
That is a possibility.
Which is going to be worse than we're in right now. So there's that side.
I think that's an equal. But yeah, I don't know other than to continue to work on positive change. I don't know how we make it attractive to where to Oakland.
Especially in the time frame of a month or two.
Well, I think I'll go ahead and make a motion to direct staff to make up with a letter to Kristen and Paul, if you can work with Lucy on this letter on some positive changes that would go to Oakland. This some of the positive changes from a commission standpoint, and from our standpoint, fiscally, and where we stand on it. But just to give Oakland an idea where we're going. So I'll make the motion to have Lucy come over with that letter and make direct it to the Oakland board.
I'll second. Now we have further discussion.
What do we have for further discussion?
I don't think there's much downside, at least in the letter. Let them know things
Right.
are going all right. Let's at least try.
We send the letter, says here's what the changes have been. It's sort of just a letter. Consider, have you considered coming back to Chambers?
Our public
Or
knows
coming back to
we've
the-
tried to do some of that, and
Yep.
again, we don't have any control over their board and how they vote.
Yep. And I think in that letter, you should address response times for their constituents. But do it
Just to throw out the response time, you have to have the data to show what is the response time. Because we can assume that it's not great, but
You could state it
if we don't
generally like,
have
hey,
this-
consider response time. We don't have the data, but consider your response times.
a proximity of,
Consider your constituents, but proximity to some services, including your mutual aid when needed, right? So if we don't have that, and they don't have that, then coming through other areas. Aid need, you know,
Things to consider. And Jane, you can speak to this, how successful our letter writing campaigns have been.
exactly.
don't make it strongly worded. That never works.
So, all right. We have a motion
Be
and a
nice to
second.
work either.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion passes. All right. Moving on to
We on
all right,
10C?
10C. All right. So I got a certificate of accommodation from Governor Evers here. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. The State of Wisconsin Certificate of Accommodation honoring Lisa M. Moulton, Village of Cambridge, Wisconsin. On behalf of residents of the state of Wisconsin, I congratulate you on the occasion of your retirement and thank you for your 21 years of dedicated service. Your commitment to public service has greatly contributed to the well-being and quality of life of all Wisconsinites. You have brought proficiency as well as expertise to our profession and will serve as an excellent role model for others to follow. I extend my personal thanks to you for your contributions made to the state of Wisconsin. My best to you for an enjoyable and rewarding retirement. Signed July 5th, 2025. Best to the 13th day of June 2025. Tony Evans, Governor of Wisconsin.
All right.
Hey,
So
nice.
we will give this to Lisa at
Chris,
her retirement.
staff will be seeing her on Monday, or is it okay if I bring that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna congratulate Lisa in her retirement. Moving on to public comment. Doesn't look like we have.
We skipped them off of
All right.
our 101. Can we do that again?
Questions and referrals to staff of future agenda items, the ordinance follow-up. It looks like we're gonna get some help from the DNR on that one. And then the public works director position. We're gonna be discussing that because I believe Eric's time is coming up to a close.
And- I think that'll be on both agenda items, both agendas for July.
Public Works, and we're going to have a Public Works meeting in July.
Or both village, or whatever. Okay.
Both village reports.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Okay. Upcoming meetings,
Oh,
July
please.
8th, 2025,
Yeah.
Village Board, July 9th, Library Board, July 14th, Planning Commission, July 15th, Board of Review, or July 15th, Water and Sewer, and July 22nd, Village Board.
Can you add July 23rd?
I already did write that down here. I will add Fire and EMS Commission. Yeah.
Have we not called another personnel meeting? 'Cause
No.
I know we had holidays, people off, so we're gonna have to get one on the.
Yes, we will.
Yep, no, sounds good. Thank you.
Going back to future agenda items and referrals to staff, where we stand with the pro welcome signs.
A surveyor I can answer.
Yeah,
Right,
go
we
ahead.
had the contractor with the surveyor who was going to draft up the easement as soon as he got the survey done.
Do we know if he's been scheduled to do the survey?
Yes, they were beginning the preliminary work. I don't know if it was last Friday or the Friday before. He stated that on-site work would be a couple weeks yet, but it should be done soon. Because at the time that I signed the document and got it to him the very next day, after that was passed at the last board meeting, he had said 2 to 3 weeks, so I can follow up with him and see where we're at, but it should not be long, and then we'll get it over to you always.
Thank you.
And then another future agenda item is just the subcommittee we had on the LNK. We can get an update on that.
Are you guys clear with what kind of budget you should be working with?
For the most part, yeah.
With what?
All right. Anything else? I'll take 14.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
I
second.
think we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We are adjourned.